Hi all, welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. So it's Tuesday, 9:10. There's another two iconic games. It's quite humid today in the UK, and so I'm wiping some sweat off. By the way, yeah, it's there's another two iconic games from the 1940s to have a look at. Hi all, welcome to another. Let's mute over there, and I'm misting up as well. There's some. Apparently, it does get colder in the UK starting from tomorrow. So anyway, okay. So this first game to show you is Yuri Gusev against Auerbach. I'm really probably pronouncing that incorrectly. The two names, in fact. Well, Gusev is the easiest one to pronounce out of the two. He was awarded the Soviet Master of Sports title in 1951. And he's still around, born 1921. Apparently he's 95 years of age and still kicking around. Now, his opponent, Auerbach, there's not much information about him actually. So let's swiftly move along. Okay, so E4 was played by Yuri Gusev. And we have a Sicilian defense, knight f3. Let's actually add live book as well, and a Gibitzer as well. Okay, so we have d6, an open Sicilian, d4, c takes, knight f6, knight c3, g6. So this looks like a dragon, but white plays bishop e2. The most critical move is usually well, bishop e3. But in this game we have bishop e2, which is another popular idea. Knight c6, knight b3, bishop g7, white castles. Now we have bishop e6. Okay, f4. Rook c8. Now f5. This has a little bit of a downside. That e5 square is more sensitive. The bishop drops back, but maybe black's not too displeased by this position because that looks like a good square to use. White plays super aggressively now. Can you spot this really super aggressive move by white? White play. I'll give you 20 points if you can put on your super aggressive hat and try and guess this next move that white plays here. What would you play here? So you've just given up the e5 square, which is kind of anti-positional, but what is in the theme of justifying the earlier aggression? Anything? What would you say is a good follow-up here? Anyone? Maybe 20 points is too stingy. 200 points, virtual points, is better. Okay, g4. So it has the potential threat of g5. Actually, which the engine appreciates that, by the way, as a threat here, g5. It's kind of squishing, isn't it? It's pushing them like that. But it doesn't actually appreciate g4 that much. g4, even though it has that juicy threat, is not actually, from a technical perspective, appreciated. I think there's probably... The reason is, well, black played knight e5, but there's a flaw which is spotted by computers, maybe, a slight flaw of sorts, that somehow this position is not that pleasant here. Now what is this flaw based on? Let's have this. This isn't the game continuation. This is not the game continuation. Knight takes e4. Now queen c6 is thought to be slightly better actually with this nasty pin, but taking here first and then the check. This all gets to be very, very different. Yeah, this is nasty for white because the queen's actually, yeah, it's kind of handy. This whole check business is why you know, this whole g4 thing is not even, it's not really recommended, but we're talking about recommendation in theory from the engine point of view, assuming the opponent will play perfect moves. So this is very clever stuff, you know, this check, just to take this diagonal and then bang here and then use the two diagonals. It's very, very clever stuff. Is someone definitely going to play that? You see, if they don't play that, if they play like this instead, knight e5, then actually g5, this is a really good legitimate threat to gain space. Now the knight's pushed back to a really bad place. So that's just interesting. We're all kind of gamblers in a way when we play our moves. But, you know, when we take these risks and get away with them, we get big positions. This is now getting to be, it looks like a visually good position after knight d5. Because, you know, f6 is now a major threat, it seems, from white. But with black to play again, there's a good resource here. In theory, this wasn't played though. h6, it wasn't played. To be able to answer f6, maybe like this, where, you know, it's not too bad, but in the game we get maybe a suboptimal of f6. And the thing is, black's pieces do not look particularly healthy now. It's like they've been pushed back. White's pieces are all more aggressive, so all it takes is a few inaccuracies, and this ambitious space gain seems to have been fully justified so far. Bishop e3 is played, now looking at this pawn, and that's protected actually. This is a pawn worth taking, because then there's b6 after, so that's actually protected. But now this knight d4 looks at that e6 square. Yeah, this looks kind of nasty to go into e6 potentially, or even more tortureful is knight f4 to go into e6 like that. So both knights looking at e6. That's the more effective thing actually. We have king f7, and here knight f4 is a good move. It wasn't played. c3 actually, that's also another good move. It introduces queen b3 here on this diagonal. We see queen e8, and now actually knight e6 is played, which is a good move. That's taken. So it's king f8, and we have, yeah, this position where black's really cramped, and white plays something which looks really interesting in relation to this pawn chain, to sort of smash this pawn chain to bits. Can you see what white plays here? So white's play here. What would you play in this position? You want to smash this pawn chain to bits. How could you do that? Any ideas? So if we look at this position, there's a very nice f file here. The king's awkward. These pieces look passive. This is probably black's best piece here, like the knight on e5. This looks like one of white's best pieces, but is this something worth doing here? Yeah. Again, it might not actually be the technically best move. It is a spectacular looking move. It's not really maybe the technically best move. I must emphasize that here. Things like queen b3 and bishop d4 are mentioned as probably the most, you know, technically best. But here in this position, white played knight takes f6, which intuitively damages the pawn chain. You know, if takes, then there's big trouble like that. If takes here, which wasn't played, then we have queen takes d6 check, and this is just horrible. Queen takes e5 regains the material anyway. So black played actually knight takes f6. Sorry, not bishop takes. Knight takes. We have g takes f6. Bishop takes, which gives way, that weakness of the last move gives way, that h6 square gives way to it. So bishop h6 going in there actually. And now carrying on with this pawn chain stuff, can you see what white plays here? Which there's another factor introduced in this position, which is this kind of imprisoned rook on h8. An imprisoned rook, actually, like connected passed pawns or an unassailable knight outpost, these are all things I would count for so-called instructive games. My influence is Chernev's Most Instructive Games of Chess book, and the way to look at these instructive elements of the position is that actually a lot of them are beyond horizon of the old engines of, say, the 1980s and 90s. You can tell a powerful concept if you can trick basically an incremental depth search into not really understanding a thing about the move. So if the move is connected with a powerful concept, to me, like connected passed pawns or an imprisoned piece or a powerful outpost on d5, then that to me is a concept worth knowing about and seeing a few instructive games. Actually, in that regard, by the way, Chernev's Most Instructive Games of Chess book has a lot of themes like that, like aggressive king and other themes, phalanx of pawns. But here, we have got something which is well above horizon effect of most engines. It's a visual feature here which is tapped into. It's not just this pawn chain undermine, but this rook is tapped into with this next move, which is rook takes f6, because what we have here is one of the key black pieces being taken out. This bishop is having a more permanent residence on h6 without being challenged with bishop g7 there. So we're left with this powerful concept now, this rook that's trapped in the corner. But white is down in material, but how much? And how is black wriggling out of this after queen takes d6? The immediate threat, if white has another move, would be rook f1. Say black didn't do anything. What's the immediate idea? I believe one idea is to crash through on f8. Let's just give black some bad moves to see. Rook f1. I'm just giving some bad moves. Rook f6, and we'll play rook f8 after, or e7 for rook f8. This would be the crushing plan, coordinating everything on a key square and totally winning if black wasn't doing anything. Okay, but black surely has a lot of time here, and he plays rook c6, which may be one of the absolute best moves in the position actually. If we look at ways to try and remove the queen, for example, queen c6, there's queen e7 here, threatening mate in 1, and also the back row is vulnerable, so actually this is difficult. If queen c5, we can take that, and then this imprisoned rook is shown up here after rook f1, because it's not really helping, and this pawn's not letting the king escape. White's still threatening rook takes f6 here. This kind of position is getting untenable for black. It's just a very tactical position. White's going to regain material. It's going to be horrible. So queen c6 in a nutshell, queen e7 would seem to be one of the strongest ideas. So if we look at this position, it's already rather awkward. This is the main plan, to focus on f8 if black didn't have any moves. White could just play a few moves. That's what he'd do. But yeah, so we have rook c6. It's probably one of the better defensive tries. Giving the knight back here, I think we can just take that. And bishop d1 is good to get onto this diagonal here. That would be a major threat, and just white would be totally like winning. So okay, so there aren't that many defensive tries. So we'll run with the game. Rook c6. Now this is really, really horizon crushing. This next move, whether it's sound or not, whether we can prove it's sound, is another thing. What we can say, there's visual evidence, visual intuitive evidence that this move is the best move in the position, but there isn't technical evidence at my disposal at the moment. So white play here. What would you play in this position? Remember, so I've told you the rook on h8 is kind of trapped. This is probably black's best piece, by the way. We've got a dangerous diagonal here, which we can route a bishop into if needed. If it's not c4, there's a few factors. I think these are the major ones. So if trying to list them again, we've got an imprisoned rook, we've got a sensitive diagonal, we've got a dangerous pawn on e6, we've got potential f-file pressure, and we've got potential reroute of the bishop on a sensitive diagonal. There's a few things to list there about the position. Okay, it's not shown up as like the strongest move here, by the way, by Stockfish. What is shown up is Queen A3. Queen A3, for example, Rook takes E6. This, and it should be apparently this is about equal. There's a perpetual check. Yeah. Possibilities, if nothing else. Queen A3. Queen D4, again, it just loses that pawn. So, yeah, no, the human move actually doesn't say goodbye to the pawn. The human, Gusev, didn't say goodbye to the pawn. He actually saves the pawn by playing this. Because actually now, that pawn is not going anywhere, actually, after Rook F1. Not going anywhere that quickly, anyway. Because if Queen takes E6, Rook F8 checkmate, and if Rook takes E6, then we have Bishop C4, nasty pin, and this is just actually forcing mate after, say, B5 taking. It's just forcing mate actually. So that pawn is not actually going anywhere. So it's interesting that pawn is kept here, and there's only one move, it seems, from a technical perspective, which promises black anything, which is Rook C7. All the others are equal, apparently. So when I say all the others are just literally given as 0.00, we're talking A6, Queen D8, Queen E7, Rook C8, Rook C5, all 0-0. The move which was promising something is now at 0-0 as well. Rook C7. This is now 0-0 as well. I'm not entirely sure. The idea might be to just cut across to interrupt F8 here. This might be the idea. So we have this trying to deflect the queen away from F8. And this is such a delicate position, actually, with elements of zugzwang, that actually, you know, Stockfish might not be up to it. You need to have an engine which doesn't have any null pruning heuristic. If I switched engine here, just to show that to Houdini, it doesn't have a null move pruning heuristic, which means it can factor in problem-like positions which have an element of zugzwang. I think this is one of those. I believe there's an element of zugzwang. It might not find White's advantage. It's not finding White's advantage at a certain, you know, depth 25 here. But this is not the game continuation anyway. Okay, I'll maybe if one of you have got powerful hardware, you might want to check this position. I'll give you like the fen string. Actually, I'm going to paste the fen string into the chat here. If anyone's got super powerful hardware, you want to run that position to see if it's more than 0. That's the fen string. I'll put it here as well on the chat here. No, I can't. Okay. Anyway, we'll go back to the game continuation. It's Rook C8 was played in the game. So that doesn't have the idea of cutting across the bishop. So we've got some prisoners in the position. The rook on h8 is a major prisoner. The bishop does try and improve itself on this diagonal. So that pawn is still immune because the bishop b3 clearly. Here, rook c4 was played, bishop b3, b5. So black is prepared to give up the exchange. But now we've got kind of two visual prisoners in the position after taking. That the queen must nanny the f8 square, and the rook's imprisoned, which also in turn imprisons this pawn, which is blockaded by the bishop. So these two heavy guys are really tied down in this position. And it's here, okay, b3, which promises to create another a visual thing of interest, a potential passed pawn. Now, if this is taken, we've got a running passed pawn, which is going to be, in a long-term way, quite dangerous as a distraction device, if nothing else. If it goes up to c6, it's going to be dangerous. Black actually played a5. Maybe this wasn't the path of greatest resistance. Before we go into a5, let's have a look at c takes, a takes, a6. c4, queen d8. Black's not going to be doing much. Just waiting around, basically. Let's see, is there a way of improving the position? It's not seeing it, actually. It's just given a 0, which I don't trust, actually. I think it needs more depth. Because black doesn't seem to be doing anything in this position. So the game continuation appears to have made it, given it much less, there's much less resistance here in the game continuation, which was a5. So let's just follow this now. B takes c4, which creates this passed pawn potential. Queen e7. We have king g2. And now queen a3. That pawn on a2 is protected. Queen goes back to e7. And now actually white played rook f1. It does seem as though this c5 might actually be strong here. Rook f1 was played, but c5 might actually be strong. The queen takes to get into f7 here. This appears to be strong. And now there'll be a threat of rook d7, which again is keeping this rook in prison. And apparently, you know, this position is very bad for black. So say a4. Right, there's also a check here. Check. Winning the queen is good enough. So the queen would have to flee, basically, to avoid being lost here. So let's have a look at queen a3. Now king h1. Now the queen hasn't got c1 here. This is just a variation of the game. So there's no check. There's no check at the moment. So if the queen goes back, there's a win here with just the check and rook d7. The queen can't go back, otherwise it'll be lost. But where does the queen actually go here? I think the point is this is a zugzwang. Basically, I mean g5. I think it's like approaching a zugzwang or something. Rook d7 threatens mate in 2 anyway, even if the queen's not lost. And if the queen has to go back, then white's just in a winning rook and pawn ending. Or just wins like this, in fact. Not for very long, just wins like that. So yeah, there's nothing to do there. There's nothing to do there. So c5 does appear winning, basically, because of this rook f7. Just to recap, c5 appears winning. This rook f7, this position appears winning. If here trying to get a check, there's rook f8, checkmate. So if the queen tries to send the diagonal, just to recap, here it is a zugzwang after king g1, king f1 or king h1. Anything else is not good enough. If the pawn moves, that loses the rook. If the bishop moves, that's not good enough, h6. But a king move is zugzwang here. Not h3, because then there's check. So a king move, either h1, g1 or f1. any of these three, apparently they're just winning for white. It keeps the zugzwang in this position. But anyway, that just shows c5 is showing the strength of the position. Rook f1 was played. Still white's in the driving seat here, and c5 is on the card still. Black tries g5. Now, does this change the picture for c5? In the game, rook f5 was played, exploiting that kind of weakness of the last move. Does it change the picture? Just out of interest, does it change the picture here? It does. It seems, because this position is slightly. No, it doesn't. Hang on. No, it doesn't. It's still a zugzwang. It doesn't matter if there's a pawn on g5 or whatever. We have this position, and we've still got this zugzwang here. Even if the king goes into check, it doesn't matter here because of king g4, and then because of that threat of mate, this position, this is just going to be a horrible zugzwang soon. Well, this is actually just getting mated like this with the threat of mate there. Yeah, because we've actually got this pawn covering a key exit square as well. Two of the key exit squares are already taken away. So this is just losing. If here, check, king takes, and again we have this prison, and actually this position, king f6, and we're going to queen this pawn actually. Yeah, with checkmate. So yeah, there's some fascinating lines which imply actually that c5 is winning here. Yeah, c5 is winning here. After rook f6, this is a winning position for white, it seems. But anyway, rook f5 is also a good move. That was played. Now we have g4. Now actually c5 was played by Gusev here, because he spotted this mating contraption, basically, that actually this idea of the check, because that pawn was shielding the king on the g file, and it's not. It's by its coming here. Rook g5 is now introduced. So, you know, queen takes just runs into rook g5 checkmate here. So the queen is just very passive. Queen d8 was played. This pawn can now try and distract the queen away from that critical g5 square. After queen e7, c7, and that's it. Black is faced actually with a forced mate in 2 now, and resigns on move 37. Now, I did do an analysis of this game on the channel some time back. Yeah, it is an amazing game, but I think for me, yeah, the basic thing to get from it is there are a lot of visual things in chess which really we need to have those visual patterns in our repertoire of things to aim for, like trapped pieces, dangerous passed pawns, mating nets. There's a patterns repertoire we need to have available, and this is like an iconic game representing, you know, the trapped rook and black, you know, just materially having material but without any point. So it's a fantastic example of material without any point to it. If it's totally trapped and blockaded in, it's not worth anything. So yeah, a very, very interesting queen sack which sets that all off. And there is some intrigue if actually with best play this was winning for white. So if anyone wants to analyse that, then yeah, it's kind of interesting computational thing, and I think to check out with best play if that queen sack is actually sound. So anyway, a fascinating game there. Okay, let's go on to another game now. Yeah. So game 2 for tonight is Max Euwe versus Paul Keres. Keres. Okay, this was played. They actually had a match in 1939 going into 1940, a match of 14 games between Max Euwe and Paul Keres were staged in various Dutch cities, Amsterdam, Utrecht, Hilversum, The Hague and Rotterdam between the 24th of September 1939 and the 15th of January 1940. So this is a big match. Actually, Paul Keres, the Crown Prince of chess, actually ended up winning the match. Now this is one of the more fascinating games in the match. So let's have a look here. D4 was played by Max Euwe. Knight F6, C4, E6. We have Knight F3, Queen's Indian position. Now the old main line is used in this game. This is what is considered the old main line with 7 Knight E4. And I'm basically taking on C3. This is the old main line. G3, Bishop B7, Bishop G2, Bishop E7, white castles, black castles, Knight C3. Now Knight E4. So this is the most trodden approach actually, historically, to play Knight E4 to take on C3. I think we're almost in trap territory as well if black's not careful. If a move like D6, maybe D5 is actually nasty. So yeah, Knight E4 is kind of, yeah, historically very popular. Queen C2, Knight takes, Queen takes, D6, Queen C2, we have F5. Knight E1 challenges the bishop on B7. Queen C8 protecting the bishop on B7. E4. Knight D7. D5. We have F takes E4. Queen takes E4. Knight C5 protecting E6 and hitting the queen. Queen drops back. Bishop F6. And this looks like an interesting move to play. Bishop H3. It looks like a very interesting move, pinning that pawn. It's protected for a moment, even more. Bishop E3, as though white's going to take that knight on C5, then take here, winning the exchange basically. Black would have to give up the rook, right? So we have Queen D8, and this is actually taken. And probably expecting just a routine capture here. Now if a routine capture, then bishop takes E6 is better for white. This is better for white. And if we capture like this, this is actually an improvement from white's perspective, just slightly as well. It's good for white. What do you think black played here? Now we're gonna I don't want to flip the board midway, but so black's play here. Does Paul Keres take on C5, or does he do something else? What would you do here? Actually, alright, let's take it from black's point of view. So black's play. So you're temporarily a piece down, right? You've got 2 pieces. The opponent's just taking your knight on C5. So the opponent's got 3 pieces, minor pieces. Actually, he didn't capture, even though he plays this. Even though this seems to have a fatal flaw to it in the form of bishop E6 check. But yeah, King H8 just casually accepting this position. It's not a bullet game just because one's a piece down. There might be more to the story here to investigate. And if you've got time on your clock, you can investigate it. Of course, we're in a culture now where everyone's playing bullet chess, and these sort of positions are just bypassed in the flick of an eye or blitz chess. But yeah, no, this is a classic game. Yes, people did think about their moves here. So even though it's a bishop down or piece down, it's a big problem, this position, because of this pin. This pin implies this element of great immobility, and in fact, if c takes, we're going to get our piece back here quite comfortably. With interest, both bishops hanging, we're going to get a piece back with interest. This would be very nice for black. So yeah, this nasty pin is worth it, right? White plays rook d1, so black is getting at least his piece back now. Thanks very much. If cd, I think this nasty pin is evident, but not entirely exploitable. I mean, there is bishop d5 though. There is. And here, instead of queen takes actually, which is better for white, because there's a rook hanging at the end of that. Queen e7, again, this pin is pretty nasty. And this ends up better for black. Yeah. So anyway, so c takes d5 was tempting. In fact, yeah, bishop d5 or even bishop d4 is actually quite good as well. So anyway, white played knight g2. We have d4, which creates this very, very nice bishop on this diagonal. And given another move now, bishop c8 is going to be nasty. So white tries to support his bishop with f4 to be able to at least answer bishop c8 with f5. But black, Paul Keres, had another idea here in this position. He played actually d3, and he's getting the wrath of both bishops to white's, pardon me, to white's king here. If we can get this bishop, he's got the wrath of both bishops to white's king, potentially. Now bishop d4 check wasn't actually played though. This is good for black, this position. Queen f6, this is good for black, even if f5 is allowed. g6. There's something unstable here about white's position. If we follow this through, be threatening something like this. I mean, this is just unstable for white. This nasty pin makes it unstable, I believe. Black's threatening now things like this. But anyway, that wasn't played. So while bishop d4 is attractive and sensible looking, a different move was played. Black's play here. I've ruled that out for you. It wasn't bishop d4. So what else is possible? Now, there is a kind of, yeah, okay, all right, queen takes d3, yeah, a couple of pieces for the queen, but also after this check, yeah, white doesn't want to take, he'll be like the exchange down, he's like 2 rooks bishop in a lost position, so he has to accept 2 rooks for the queen, right? But if he goes here, this is even worse because we have actually, it's not just the fact there's two pieces. In fact, black's pieces are fully coordinated, and this knight's horribly pinned. This wasn't played king h1. White actually goes into a horrible self-pin with rook f2. But let's examine queen king h1 for a moment. This position. Why is it so bad? Why is it so bad? I think if black has another two moves, he'll double rooks and play rook e2, and that'll be it. Just to show that, I'm going to give rubbish moves now. a3. I think we can just play this, and rook e2 is good. Yeah, and this would just be horrible. We can just actually just force checkmate. So if we had our own way, we'd just be forcing checkmate like this. But anyway, so yeah, after king h1, it seems this position is untenable. Rook f3, say, trying to unpin the knight. Still this one. We're going to do rook e2. I think this is untenable. This position anyway. If white doesn't do that, come in here, and the threat now is bishop takes rook f2. So say here, for example, or just rook takes b2. It's just white's not doing anything here. This is just too much. This glare of the bishops is too much. So anyway, in the game we have this rather strange looking rook f2, just saying, please just get rid of the bishop pair. But black kept his evil looking bishop pair with rook takes e6. So we've got this evil looking bishop pair, and we've also got the rooks ready to join forces to crash down the e file. It's pretty good value for the queen sacrifice as it is. It's not just for two pieces, is it? Basically, we've got two happy partners here. The bishops are happy partners, and the two rooks are happy partners. Everyone's happy for the black pieces here. So anyway, king f1 was tried. Rook a e8. At least white's trying to guard e1. But black is threatening something like bishop takes and rook e2 here, just winning more material. We have f5. Maybe set against that, just keeping that threat on the rook. The rook moves again, threatening bishop takes f2 and rook e2, because at the end of this the g2 knight is dropping off. Example, a4, we just played this, we play rook e2, we take here and we take the g2 knight after. That's why this is the major threat in the position. So white has to address this bishop f2 and rook e2. If he moves the rook, actually, this might be the most crushing move. And maybe taking here, keep the bishops. And if this loses another piece, g5, it's all crashing down. So anyway, white tries f6. This is taken, and now rook d2. Max overplays rook d2. But we have now bishop c8. This is really interesting. It introduces a few ideas like pinning the knight here. If we can pin the knight, then we get access to e1 with rook e1 as a mate threat, just to show that, you know, if a4 bishop h3, we're threatening rook e1 checkmate. So this is the intention. And if here, to stop rook e1, check, and if takes, not rook e1 because king takes, but actually just taking here and black's just totally winning. So yeah, there's horrible intention of the principal threat is to pin the knight now. That's the principal threat. Knight f4 is played on move 30, knight f4, which stops bishop h3. But rook e3 now, forcing the queen to move. Queen to b1. If queen c2, that doesn't help actually. Check and check, and this is nasty. Check and check is winning for black quite easily. So anyway, the queen does decide to give a helping hand to the e1 square. We see queen b1, but instead of going to e1 now, black uses rook f3 check, which wins further material, potentially, if black knows what he's doing. Does black know what he's doing? After king g2, there is a move here which wins, basically. Black to play. Black to play here. So black to play here. Any ideas? If you said bishop b7, let's investigate this, because one or two of you said bishop b7. I'm not sure this works. There is a move here, knight d5, unpinning. The unpinning idea is like a tactic in its own right. When you pin or unpin, it's still a tactic to unpin. So that's an important, basically, tactic, defensive tactic. And here it seems as though black is not getting anywhere. It seems this might actually be equal. So bishop b7 is not quite working. Hi McTell, by the way, on stream. So yeah, bishop b7 is not working. Very, very forceful move available here. And you should follow the forcing moves because you never know where they lead to by force. It's when you're in a chess game, it's like essential knowledge. The forcing sequences, because we can calculate them. They aren't too many branches, and they're basically like saying destination is you've got a guarantee of getting there. There's a guaranteed destination here, so if you've got time, you've got to check out the forcing sequences. Rook takes f4. Why would you want to go here? Because after takes, there's rook g8 check. And there's not too many branches here to investigate. If king h1, then mate in 2 off the check. Here, mate. So there's not too many branches in this position that seems to investigate after rook g8 check. If king here, rook g1 check, king e2, bishop g4 check, and we end up just winning the queen, basically, 2 bishops up. So that doesn't leave too many options. There's only one major option to check out, and this was played. And now we have bishop g4 check, which is a seesaw kind of check mechanism. White resigned here because the next check is going to be picking up the queen. If we go either g2 or g3, we can pick up the queen and be 2 bishops up. Actually, we don't have to checkmate, we're just 2 bishops up. Thanks very much. Yeah, so the game ended after this bishop g4 check. So to Paul Keres as great credit, he had, you know, these visual patterns, the bishop pair, the 2 rooks coordinating, all four of his pieces had near perfect coordination, combined with king safety issues, potential pin pieces, especially that knight was pinned in a lot of these variations. And then he also has this calculation vision as well on top of that. So he knew what should be juicy in theory, and also his calculation was up to it as well, to force his way to win material like this in the end. So this is the Crown Prince of Chess. He's called the Crown Prince of Chess. Paul Keres, the uncrowned, one of the major uncrowned kings of the game. There's actually a website set up which emphasised him, Korchnoi, and Akiba Rubinstein. Not Paul Morphy actually, although many people regard Paul Morphy as an uncrowned king. So those four players you could include as uncrowned kings. But yeah, he had stunning imagination combined with great calculation ability. And I probably should check out more of his games on my channel actually. I think unfortunately we've got a biased tendency to the official world champions and sometimes overlook. But no, he the people that know, obviously they know about Paul Keres quite a lot. So thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of these two games, and see you next week. Have a good week. Remember to like up the video if you liked it. Thanks very much. Cheers then. Oh, sorry, there's one question. King e4. Sorry, King e4. That's a mate in 3. Thanks for asking there. Addendum. Rook e8, check. Here. Bishop f3. Bishop f3. Actually, we are mating in this line. Okay, yeah, good point about King e4. Thanks very much. Cheers then.